how do we know if the abomination of desolation is taking place or has taken place? How do we know? If we're reading the Bible and we look at it and we are trying to figure out what Jesus' prophecy means in the Olivet Discourse, then we're going to have to try to look at that and see who the original audience he was talking to and what he expected in the prophecy. What did Jesus expect? Remember that. What is the expectation of Jesus? What is the expectation of the audience? Do we have the same expectation? Or are we expecting things that the original audience and Jesus never expected? Let's read it. So when we're reading throughout Matthew 23 and 24, chapter 23 and 24, you will see the Greek word humes. Jesus is not speaking in vague, generic future terms to a distant 21st century audience. He is directly addressing his first century disciples and the crowds present with him. So the humes in Greek, is the key audience indicator that ties up entire Olivet Discourse and the preceding judgments to that generation that would see the temple's destruction in AD 70. Here it is in the breakdown. Matthew chapter 23 sets the immediate context and audience. Jesus speaks directly to the crowds and to his disciples. Quote, chapter 23, verse 1. So that's what it says. He spoke, quote, the crowds and to his disciples, unquote. And then unleashes 7 woes of judgment against the scribes and Pharisees using repeated second person plural, you. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Verses 13, 14, 15, 23, 25, 27, and 29. The chapter climaxes with the 2 time-bound statements aimed at the same you, that audience. The you is plural in the Greek. Matthew 23, verse 36 says, quote, truly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. And then Matthew 23:38, behold, your house is being left to you desolate. The house equals the temple standing in Jerusalem at that moment. The judgment is not postponed to a future temple that Jesus did not prophesy about. He's talking about that specific house, that specific temple. And the chapters 23 and chapter 24 are continuing. There is no disconnection, continuing narrative that you have to make sure that you're not separating in your mind when you're reading this. This is a seamless transition into Matthew 24, 1 through 3. The same disciples who just had heard the woes and judgments in chapter 23 now come up to Jesus and point to the temple buildings. Chapter 24 and 1. Jesus responds with, do you not see all these things? Matthew 24, 2. Still using the second person plural. Their question in 24:3, quote, when will these things be, unquote, is prompted by the immediate context of chapter 23. There is no break in the audience or the subject. There's a consistent second person plural, you, throughout all Matthew 24, 4 through 34. Jesus never switches to a distant they, or they will see, or that generation will see. Never. Or a future generation, or a future generation. Every major sign and command is addressed personally and directly to the people standing in front of him. You have to remember, it was a private conversation once Jesus left the temple. And his disciples came to him privately and said, when shall these things be? Verse 4 of Matthew, verse 4, quote, see to it that no one misleads you. Verse 8, quote, you will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. That's verse 6. Verse 9, quote, they will deliver you up to tribulation, and you will be hated by all nations. Verse 13, but the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. Verse 15, you will see the abomination of desolation. You see the abomination of desolation. When you, that's verse 15. The abomination of desolation is the clearest you marker. It's to that audience, that generation. Just remember this. Jesus said, there's some standing here that will not taste of death. There, over there, back then. Okay? How is that a prophecy if you project it to the future and make it to somebody else? They would have to have lived then and be, what, 2,000 years old? Is that what you're saying? These are ridiculous assumptions that people have been brainwashed by the sensationalism of dispensationalism. Let's quote, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Jesus did not say, when they see, or when a future generation sees. See, that's an assumption that's read into the text. That's not even there. The command is to flee to the mountains, verses 16 to 20. It only makes practical sense if the you is first century Christian believers. And the end is obvious from that because it's not the end of the globe. Because why would you need to run to the mountains if it's the end of the world? No, he's showing them how to escape. And guess what? If you read history at all, please read it. You will see that the Christians, when they seen the armies gathered around Jerusalem, they knew its desolation was nigh. It was near to them. And so what did they do? They fled to a place called Pella. They fled and they escaped that wicked, horrible tribulation that came upon all the religious Jews and the Pharisees and the Sadducees who rejected the Messiah. And this is exactly what Jesus said to the high priest and the Pharisees at his trial before he was crucified. Mark 14:62, Matthew 26:64. You will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. These believers would be in Judea, and everything in the whole context proves it's localized. A 21st century audience could not obey a command given 2,000 years earlier and still be in the present tense when Jesus is talking. The Olivet Discourse ends where it began, with the same you and this generation. Even so, you too, when you see all these things, recognize that he is near, right at the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. 24:33 through 34. You in verse 33 and the direct to you in verse 34 lock the entire prophecy, including the abomination, to the original audience and their lifetime. Because the pronouns are consistently second person plural and timestamped to this generation, the abomination can't be a future event. In a rebuild third temple, again, that's another assumption. It's an assumption that Jesus did not make. He said this temple, this specific building, and this was fulfilled in the events of AD 66 to 70, within the generation that Jesus actually said. Jewish zealots, factions desecrating the temple, false prophets inside the city, and ultimately the Roman armies surrounded Jerusalem. Just read Luke 21:20. It's a parallel account and a parallel prophecy of the Olivet Discourse. The you language makes any attempt to push the fulfillment into the distant future exegetically and untenable. It's impossible. Jesus was talking to them, not to us. When you don't accept the context, the original audience, what Jesus expected, you literally have to make up stuff to make the prophecy fit something else. You don't have to do that. Let the Bible be its best interpreter, not your experience, not what C.I. Scofield told you, not what these false prophets of future eschatology tell you, because they're always guaranteed going to be wrong forever and forever. Stick to the Word of God, not to false prophets.